Every 34 days, he stepped out of the trees, a man wrapped in 60 pounds of patched leather, walking a perfect 360-mile loop through Connecticut and New York. He never spoke, he never stayed, he just walked for 30 years. Through blizzards, heat waves, through a law that jailed every other vagabond but bent itself around him. Who was he? Why did he walk? And why are we still talking about him over 100 years later? I'm Sean.
I'm Kathy.
And I'm Chris.
And this is Weirder After Dark. Have you heard about the Annabelle doll update?
It is very creepy.
So what exactly happened? Because I just know that somebody on the tour died.
They had the Annabelle doll out on tour, just kind of showcasing it as well as other pieces like haunted property. And its main handler, who's like working with the doll and showcasing and going around to all these events, his name was Dan Rivera. He's been like involved with the Annabelle doll for like years. And he's currently, or not currently, he's dead, but he was, he was the senior lead investigator for the New England Society for Psychic Research, or NESPR. Apparently, after one of the most recent shows inside of Gettysburg, Pennsylvania, he was just found dead in his hotel room.
That is super creepy. Does it have any idea why? Was there...
Right now, the police have come out and they're being like, it's not the Annabelle doll, guys. Chill the fuck out. Like, it's not supernatural at all.
That's probably the first thing they should say, right?
Yeah. They've pretty much just said, hey, it's all been natural causes, but the autopsy's not done yet. It's still pending due to all that going on. But
how do you detect a paranormal killing on an autopsy?
Oh my God, could you imagine if it comes out? Like first off, let's acknowledge, super sad this guy died. But yes,
very true.
How do you figure it out? Like, they can't prove to me it's not paranormal.
Exactly.
Let's go.
Yeah. And if you think about it too, like, it happened in Gettysburg.
Yeah.
Correct? So we all know Gettysburg has a long history of lots of energy
it's
happening
haunted as
there.
fuck, yeah.
So I think that's kind of weird.
Yeah.
I think that's something to be said. And the Warrens always kept Annabelle under lock and key and said, like, don't move it, don't touch it. And now the doll goes on tour. Is it normal for the doll to go on tour?
I don't think this is the first time. This is like a middle leg of the tour. So it's been on tour for a while at this point
Since
in time.
May.
So it's been a minute. And I don't know if it's ever been on tour before, though, to be honest.
But how long does it take for a paranormal energy to attach to someone and kill them?
10 to 14 days, Kathy.
I mean, I'm really sorry. I know this man has a family, but seems suspicious.
I think anything weird happening on that tour was going to be attributed to the Annabelle doll because it's famous and it's haunted as fuck and it's weird. So anything happening on that tour would have to come back and people guessing that it's paranormal, right?
Interestingly enough, though, when he was found in the hotel room, the Annabelle doll was not with him in the hotel room. It was back at wherever the event was and locked there. So I don't know.
But
it wasn't found holding arsenic or something in the bathroom. Like,
apparently not.
He had stab wounds on his shins. It was like 2-foot doll.
Oh my God. Graphic.
But again, a paranormal energy, does it have to be in the room, or can it? I mean, we hear about entities attaching themselves to people.
Yeah.
But I do question the fact that he had been involved with the Annabelle doll for so long up to this point.
Maybe the doll just got pissed off how he answered a question. Like the audience that night. I don't know.
She's like, I'm having a bad hair day. Can we not do this?
I will say that there's probably a good number of individuals out there that think that Ed and Lorraine Warren are absolute fucking grifters. And maybe that is the case as well.
Maybe.
So,
well, there's a lot of weird shit happens in Connecticut.
Yeah,
Connecticut is a very strange place.
And speaking of Connecticut and some of the strange shit going on, that's actually where this story that I'm going to share today takes place.
Fun.
All right.
Yeah, and it is about the Leatherman.
Who?
Yes, the Leatherman. That sounds like a really badass
really does.
name, right?
Yeah. I'm expecting someone that's like wearing other people's skin.
Yeah, like Texas Chainsaw Massacre type shit.
Never heard the story.
Yeah, it's not thing to do with that either.
Okay.
The murder stories are very low on this one, actually at 0. So there's going to be no murder, but still a really interesting New England legend. You ready to dive in?
Yeah.
I'm ready.
All right, let's do it. This strange, repeating story began in 1857. A lone figure, wrapped in patched leather, his coat and trousers stitched from the scraps of old shoes, would emerge from the woods or from down the road. He carried nothing but a matching leather satchel packed with his food, a Bible, and a few tools. He would walk into the heart of a Connecticut town. He never stayed long. just enough for a meal, some tobacco, a cup of coffee or two. He spoke no words, only quiet grunts, which I imagine like, that's how I imagine that in my head. Simple hand signals in exchange for whatever it was that he needed. The first few times he appeared, I imagine people were uneasy, curious, maybe even a little afraid of this leather-wrapped traveler who came out of nowhere. And before anyone could ask who he would vanish back into the trees or down the path. Exactly 34 days later, though, like clockwork, he would return. And then again, and again, and again, every 34 days. For over 30 years.
Oh, that's weird. Yeah. You're telling the story of this vagrant who's, not all there, wanders into town. But then every 34 days, like clockwork, he's back in town.
And not
What's
just
he doing
one
in town?
41 different towns. This would happen.
So he had the same pattern that he would go through every
For
cycle.
30 years?
30 straight years. By the 1880s, the Connecticut and New York towns on his path knew his rhythm so well they built their lives around it. Pies and loaves of bread were left out on fence posts like offerings.
Oh, that's nice.
Kids would sprint from schoolrooms to line the dirt roads just to watch him pass. There are even stories of teachers canceling lessons altogether because really, what could compete with the sight of the Leatherman stepping out of the trees and coming to the town? I'm just like, I love the visual of that. Like imagine like Professor Chris is just like, children, what are you doing? Like, Leatherman. It is time for physics, Leatherman.
If you do not pay attention in school, this is where your life will go.
Oh my God.
I'd be down to go watch.
Yeah, I mean,
what are you guys doing today? Leatherman's gonna be in town. Let's go.
Yeah,
I'm down.
You want to go check out watch this guy just walk? Was he homeless, a vagabond, a vagrant? Well, if he was no ordinary wanderer. Wanderers don't return every 34 days if answering some mission.
For 30 years?
For 30 years that their life depended on. In 1879, Connecticut passed a law that turned tramps, that was the legal word then for anyone without a fixed home, into criminal class. They would get prosecuted, arrested, kicked out of town. Being homeless was literally turned into a crime. And yet this man was the exception. In a state ready to jail anyone without a home, the Leatherman became the only man the law refused to touch. He wasn't just a wanderer. He wasn't just another vagabond. His presence carried weight and enough that the law bent itself around him.
Wow.
When I was a kid, the movie Lady and the Tramp always confused me because I always associated tramp with like a hussy, like a floozy. So it confused me that the boy dog was the tramp.
Yeah, he was a vagrant that didn't have a home. Yeah.
But suddenly I now understand why they called him a tramp.
It's all coming together.
Finally.
I am today years old.
A lot of what we know about him comes from old newspaper archives and interviews collected in The Road Between Heaven and Hell, a documentary that tracked down the last people who remembered his legend firsthand. And I want to call that out. We have documented firsthand encounters of this legend. This is a real story. This isn't something that's fake.
So he's like a real person.
Mm-hmm.
Huh.
But for a living legend, the Leatherman left almost nothing behind. When he passed away in a cave in 1889, the coroner could only guess his age at around 50. Seriously, that's it. There are no other records, no confirmed name, nothing. Just, he might have been 50. That's what we got.
The record keeping back then.
When they searched his cave, they found a small French prayer book among his belongings. It was the closest thing to a clue about who he might have been.
Maybe that's why he grunted because maybe he didn't speak English.
There's actually a lot of theories that he didn't speak English and only knew a couple words.
Okay.
Some other theories, I couldn't find anything concrete, so I didn't add to the story, but we'll throw it in, said that he could speak fluent French.
That's what I'm thinking. Yeah. They had a French Bible?
French prayer book.
Yeah. So that would make
sense.
This
is getting so weird.
Yeah.
Nah, keep going, man.
Everything he owned fit into his small leather satchel. A tin pail, a knife, a small axe, leather working tools. Outside of the contents of his satchel, the Leatherman only had his coat, his hat, his pants, and his shoes. Again, all made out of leather that he patchworked together, and it all weighed nearly 60 pounds that he strapped to his body as he walked around.
Good God.
Whoa. Could you put on a 60-pound backpack, a rucksack, and walk 10 miles a day?
That's insane, right?
I could. but not 2 days in a row, man.
Yeah.
This guy's in great shape.
Right? And to take that even further, imagine the summer heat in a
Ew.
leather suit. His whole suit would stiffen and crack. And in the winter, it would freeze and creak as he walked. So you could hear him coming down because the leather suit that he wore.
He's doing this in a blizzard. He's doing this in the pouring rain.
And he's clearly never stopped.
No
the
breaks.
dates, yeah. Like he's hitting the same dates, that same cycle. Wow.
Yeah.
This is getting close to an OCD disorder.
The townspeople could literally mark the day on the calendar that they would see him again. And they
That
would
is
know
so
and they would
crazy.
prepare. Now, as we're talking about this leather suit and we're talking about the summer heat, I can only imagine the unique stench,
The stench.
that must have come
I was
with.
thinking that. I'm like, this motherfucker must have really stank.
So when you put all these towns he visited on the date together, he walked 360 miles. How long did it take him to do that?
Every 34 days, he'd be back into the same town.
Okay.
It's a 34-day loop. Keep going 10
360 miles every 34
He's more
10
regular
miles
than
a
some
day.
girls' cycles.
Yeah.
Wow.
I said, yeah, like, yeah. What you
I
said.
agree with that.
Yeah.
You can edit that out, but
But yeah, so 11 times a year, he would appear back in every single town.
wow.
Yeah.
This is so strange.
It is so strange.
Because like, what happens if he like fell? Like, so that mean literally think about it. Like, Jesus Christ, I walk in the woods and I trip and over a root. Like,
Yeah, you think there's a bad snowstorm, he shacks up somewhere, he'd be off a day, but
torrential
No days off.
downpours.
no days off
If
for
he
this man.
falls,
Yeah.
like sprains his ankle.
Yeah. Bill Belichick would have loved this guy.
He would have been a running back.
Oh, yeah. And then there were his habits. The Leatherman had two loves, coffee and tobacco. Stories from half a dozen towns talk about him stopping just long enough to drink a hot cup left on the porch or to refill his tin pail he carried. If you wanted that rare nod of approval from the Leatherman, you left out coffee. One Meridian shopkeeper was quoted as saying he would never refuse a hot cup of coffee, even if he turned away everything else we were offering him. This man right here in New England, first man to run on Dunkin's.
He went on to start a company called Dunkin' Donuts.
That was like the only joke I wrote into this. I was like, that's too good to turn off.
That was pretty good.
Yeah. All right. It's reported that the only thing that matched his mileage was his appetite, though. In Bradford, Connecticut, a grocer reported watching the Leatherman eat the following in one sitting: a can of sardines, a loaf of bread, a pound of milk crackers, a quarter of a pie, 2 quarts and 2 cups of coffee, a gill of brandy, and a bottle of beer.
Damn.
In one sitting.
Okay.
The sardines really threw me.
Yeah, it is kind of a weird mix,
That's
right?
Man's
He's
gonna
like, I
need some
got
carbs.
crackers, bread, sardines.
Yeah.
Only a quarter of a pie, though. Disappointing.
All right.
Disappointing.
Yeah.
Then, after eating all of that, allegedly, he walked a half mile down the road and ate a full dinner at the next house like it was nothing. So impressive, Leatherman. Impressive. And the Leatherman's love of tobacco went just as deep as his love for coffee and food. He'd smoke pipes until they burned through, then carve new ones out of wood and bits of scrap metal he found along the route. People swore you could smell a mix of smoke and leather before you ever saw him. And living in a state that has the Appalachian Trail that rips right through it, you'll often encounter AT through hikers on their treks from Georgia to Maine or southbound from Maine to Georgia. And I just want to confirm that you can smell them before you see them. But it ain't campfire smoke. It's fermented trail funk.
At that point, just burn the pad.
Just, everything.
It's just burned it all.
The Leatherman would accept food and drink when it was offered, but he never accepted indoor shelter. Families told stories of begging him to come from the cold during the winter, to come inside, finish his meal that they were offering him inside the house, only for him to shake his head and eat on the porch in silence.
Oh, that's strange. Yeah.
So strange. I was also read a couple stories that when he would come into town, if he needed someplace or shelter, if he didn't have like a cave, they offered him inside the house, he'd say no. If they offered him the barn, he would say yes.
All right.
So never around people, preferring solitude, it seems like, at least.
He sounded more like a monk than anything else at this point, right?
Kind of in a way, yeah.
Took a vow of silence, refuses an amenities.
Well, I don't know if he had a vow of silence. I'm leaning more towards he only spoke French.
All right.
Yeah. He did grunt a lot. And apparently he knew a couple like English words. He'd occasionally
Sure.
say thank you.
That's
or,
what
like,
makes me
something
think
like
that it was just that he
Sometimes
didn't know
early in
English.
the morning, that's how I order my coffee. Yeah. That translates to medium regular hot, please.
Yeah.
I love it. And I want us to imagine like saying no to indoor shelter during a New England winter. That refusal feels stubborn in a way, maybe crazy, but I think it says something about his mental space and his preferences. This is a man who would rather risk freezing to death than be in close proximity to human companionship. Was it trust issues? Had he been previously tricked or emotionally hurt or scarred? Insecurities? No one truly knows. But what we do know is he preferred solitude above all else, and coffee and tobacco were the closest things to comfort that he allowed himself. To the Leatherman, his world was a perfect circuit. 365 miles through western Connecticut and eastern New York, always clockwise, always 10 miles a day, always consistent. It went Waterbury, Meridian, Bristol, Danbury, Middleton, Watertown, Ossing, 34 days, and then back again doing it all over. And it wasn't just that he walked the same route. He had to live it as well. There were caves scattered along the circuit, and those caves became his home. You can still stand in several of them today. But back then, they wouldn't have been hidden in the thick woods of Connecticut and eastern New York, because in the late 1800s, Connecticut and New York were mostly farmland around this area. The forest we see now had been cut back for fields and grazing. The caves the Leatherman called home would have jutted out of the hillsides, easy to spot against the open fields. And that just made me go, he clearly wasn't hiding, but just wanted to be separate from society.
But it also gave him an advantage that he could see what was coming at him.
True.
And he was reading a French book of prayers.
That is it.
That's the only book he had.
Only book.
So now it's making me think maybe it's some kind of austerity measure, a form of worship. I'm refusing shelter. I'm refusing, comforts.
Like almost like a penance?
Yeah, like a penance or a admittance, giving up things in worship.
Could have been.
Like Lent, you give up food for the day, or you give...
Why just repeat the same circle over and over and over again?
Yeah, that part feels more like an OCD disorder than anything else.
Yeah,
and the fact that he could make it to those towns on the day in any weather...
It makes me think he was looking for something.
That's a little freaky.
I don't know. It seems like, why else would you just keep going back to the same place over and over and over again?
Sounds like I'm going to tell you guys if you guys stop talking.
Unfortunately, I'm not going to tell you. Yeah. We're going to be asking ourselves these questions the entire podcast, unfortunately. The consistency, though, made him a ritual and a magnet of attention. Some families actually marked his arrival on the calendar. Kids begged their parents to bake hot biscuits dripping with honey because they were sure that's what he liked. Other kids told stories that if you met the Leatherman's eyes, you'd have good luck. Others, more negatively, said if you met his eyes, you had a bad luck. Yeah. It really depended on...
I can see that.
Yeah, depending on the town you were in. Some would even follow him, kids, back to his cave and sit with him in silence as he ate his food. During the winter, people remembered seeing him moving through blizzards. The stitched leather armor freezing stiff around his body, ice crackling with every step. Nothing got in the way of stopping his journey. In the spring, the same suit would be soaked through with rain. But again, it didn't matter. He didn't shorten his route. No matter what hit him, the circuit never broke. In some towns, the Leatherman was welcomed so openly, they even repurposed an old nursery rhyme to welcome him. One misty, moisty morning, when cloudy was the weather, I chanced to meet an old man dressed all in leather. Leatherman, Leatherman, where do you go? The winds they do whistle, the ways laid in snow.
That was beautiful, Sean. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Really moved me.
Yeah, I'm a poet. To the rest of the world, this was just a nursery rhyme. But in Western Connecticut and Westchester County, it was a man they actually saw month after month. And what I find so interesting about that is some people thought this nursery rhyme was about the Leatherman. Yeah. Interestingly enough, that nursery rhyme predated him by 200 years.
Really?
Oh,
yeah.
That's a little freaky.
Kind of, now it's
Man
almost...
dressed all in leather. He heard the nursery rhyme and became
it.
Exactly.
Wow.
I was like, did he want to recreate this?
Yeah, no, that's really strange because it fits him perfectly, right?
Yeah, it does.
I just assumed the nursery rhyme was made up about him coming around.
Yeah, I thought so too when I first read it, but when I started digging, I was like, what the fuck? Like, this is weird.
Yeah, there's also some parallels between like the Buddhist monks of Tibet. They walk around and beg for food and people are glad to see them. It's good luck. It's good for your spiritual life to give to them.
Yeah.
And they live lives of austerity and they refuse to wear clothes. They just wear robes.
And I like that point right there because most of the time people were excited to see him. It was like once a month that they just saw him. They helped feed him and keep him on his journey and fueling him moving forward. This was over 30 years. Generationally, people saw their parents take care of this person. They became of age. They took care of this person. Like, it's really interesting when you really start thinking about it.
This is so strange.
Yeah. Well, not everyone met the Leatherman with an open heart and mind. In New Haven and Fortsville, men tried to get him drunk to force him to talk. There are stories that in New Haven, they held him down, poured liquor down his throat. In Fortsville, they did the same, but then threw him into a horse trough. They didn't appreciate the Leatherman's silence and thought it was suspicious that he wouldn't talk or share stories about where he was from or what he was doing. To no one's surprise, after that, he started avoiding town centers, sticking to the country lanes inside.
Yeah, no wonder why he didn't want to go inside anybody's houses. People can be such dicks.
That was an unfortunate ad.
That's sad.
Here was this great story, and then somebody's got to go be a fucking dick.
Yeah.
In some other places, the Leatherman didn't just strike curiosity. Some saw him as a warning. There are stories of mothers pulling children back from the windows when his shadow passed. I do want to be clear, though. He never hurt anyone. He never even looked people's way most of the time. But his silence and his armor made him appear less like a man and more like a monster.
I mean, we've discussed this before in past episodes, but when people don't understand something, they turn to fear and then they turn to bigotry. And I think that just falls in line with history.
Well,
yeah.
I think that makes sense.
You have this guy shown up for 30 years. That's a lot of time for people to start to make up stories and legends and, you know,
and
this happened after he came by. And
yeah, I was going to say, and then at what point does like, oh, he came through 2 days ago and
my sheep died.
Yeah, my sheep died and Tiny Tim fell from the barn loft.
Yeah, I heard when he went through this town, the liquor store burnt down.
Exactly.
Yeah. I do want to play fair here. He does sound like he was a pretty decent dude, never hurt anyone, was just kind of doing his thing, living his life. I do want to share a picture of him, though.
Oh, I'm sure he looks like a wild man, right?
We have images. They do exist, and I want to show you all one right here. This is what he looked like.
Okay.
So I think you can
That's startling.
Imagine. Yeah, that's startling the first couple times you see him walking down the road. And
okay, yeah, I might run into her.
Yeah. And
he's a big dude.
No shot at the Leatherman, but you look like you murder people. So like, I'd be a little intimidated. Then all of a sudden add in the context that like every month he showed up and he didn't cause harm, and all of a sudden it softens it, right?
And it's in late 1800s, so it's not like you have brand new people moving into towns all the time like you would now. So like you were saying earlier, it is generational. People know of him.
Yep.
Do you know what I mean? So it's not like, who's this strange man coming? You know, they know who he is. They're marking their calendar when he's going to come. But if you didn't know, that would be scary.
Terrifying in some ways, yeah.
I would not want to run into him alone.
Well, these feelings, these vibes, both positive, mixed, some negative, continued, as I said, for almost 30 years. This was just a regular cycle. And then came the Great Blizzard of 1888. And it hit like the end of the world. 40 inches of snow in some places, 50 in others, winds up to 80 miles an hour, drifts taller than houses, trains vanished under white hills of snow, telegraph lines snapped like threads. More than 400 people in houses died in New England and New York over this winter storm. So for a man living in caves, walking 10 miles a day through open farmland, it probably should have been his end as well. But it wasn't. Yeah. When the storm finally relented and the towns compared notes, his 34-day loop had only been delayed by 4 days. 4 days. Oh my God. This man just, he still has it. He's still going. This storm killed 400 people who even had homes. And this motherfucker was like,
4 feet of snow? Yeah, I'm keep going.
I got my magic leather suit.
This is incredible, right? People remembered seeing him after the storm, moving through snowbanks taller than fences, his leather suit frozen stiff enough to crack when he bent his arms. However, they did notice something else after the storm. He was never quite the same. He moved slower, his jaw working strangely when he chewed, a trace of blood sometimes out the corner of his mouth. His body was starting to break down. Decades of pipe smoke and chewing tobacco had been eating away at him from the inside. By the time the blizzard hit, he already had cancer inside of his jaw. The timing feels kind of cruel in a way, probably just starting to have like your cancer side effects, tumors inside your mouth eating away at your jaw, and then now you have to survive this fucking crazy ass once in a lifetime blizzard. It feels mean. For another year, though, he kept walking through spring mud and summer heat, through another New England winter that must have felt longer than anything else before. The iron discipline of his 34-day loop was still there, but it was clear that the steps were slowly starting to catch up to him. And then on March 24th, 1889, just shy of a year after surviving the 1888 once-in-a-lifetime storm, they found him dead in one of his caves.
Oh.
The Leatherman died in 1889, but the story didn't. For decades, he lived on in oral history. Families pointed out the caves, teachers told kids about the man in 60 pounds of leather who walked a perfect circle, and his headstone in Sparta Cemetery had just 2 words, the Leatherman. The stone became a pilgrimage spot for more than a century. People left flowers, coins, whispered stories of the grave, generations of New Englanders telling the legend of his story. Then, in 2011, they dug it up. Historians and archaeologists hoping for answers. Maybe a DNA match, maybe a clue about his health, hell, maybe even finally figuring out what his name was. But what they found was more interesting than all that. They found nothing. There was no skull, there was no bones, just a few rusty coffin nails in the soil is all they could find. It turns out their original wooden coffin that he had been buried in was buried too close to the road. Decades of erosion and road work had chewed away at it, and there was now nothing left.
Where did his bones go? Did they just
eroded away?
Eroded away.
Yeah.
Just
eroded deeper into the dirt, maybe, or maybe just, I don't know.
Dug up by the highway patrol.
Oh, that's
moved
so sad.
on. Or I guess could it even do bones eventually get eaten and broken down? Like if there's that much chemicals and shit coming off roads,
in the dirt and
salt and
I would assume eventually it would break down, but I know that how and where they're buried, they could last decades.
It's interesting. But equally as interesting, back in 1884, a Connecticut newspaper swore they have finally solved the mystery of the Leatherman. They printed a front page story claiming the Leatherman was a Frenchman named Jules Bourgelat, a leatherman ruined in business who had come to America in shame and wandered New England out of guilt. They gave him a tragic backstory, a failed romance, a dramatic fall from grace. People loved it, and they reprinted it everywhere. It felt like closure, except there's no record of Jules Bourgelat ever existing either. Not in France, not in the US, nowhere. Historians went digging and came back with nothing. And the best theory, the paper just made this all up to sell a headline.
Yeah, there's something almost mythical about this guy. And it's just strange that nobody knew who he was, but everybody knew him for 30 years.
It's wild, right?
And that nursery rhyme.
Yeah.
That nursery rhyme is really weird. So maybe he was some sort of he was from 200 years ago.
I love the idea of seeing a ghost eat a can of sardines, a loaf of bread, throwing back a bunch of coffee and some brandy. I love that idea, though.
I need coffee and smokes.
I guess it's how deep do you want to go into the whole paranormal path, but there's theories that people are doomed to repeat the same thing over and over again.
I've got 2 theories, but I'll let Sean keep going.
Yeah, we're close. We're close. In the late 90s, the legend actually made it into rock history. Pearl Jam wrote a B-side called Leatherman. Eddie Vedder said he was drawn to this man who lived completely outside the system, never said a word, and still became a folk hero. Vedder called him one of America's first anti-heroes, a man famous not for conquering anything, but for walking a circle and leaving the rest of us to wonder. Now, the song itself, if you listen to it, it's kind of like that perfect folk rock melody. And as a guy I work with says, you can't ever really understand Eddie Vedder. He just mumbles.
So true.
But I swear his lyrics are deep. This guy I work with tells me that all the time. And in some ways they are. And I want to read the lyrics real quick for one of the verses. I read about a man to whom I may be related, Leatherman. Died a long time ago in the 1880s. Leatherman. Covered with leather, but it wasn't tight. Underneath the moon in the woods at night. Making the rounds 10 miles a day. Once a month they spot him. Here's what they say. Here he comes. He's a man of the land. He's Leatherman. Smile on his face. Axe in his pack. He's a Leatherman. That's pretty much the story right there. They summed it up pretty good. The moonlight, the woods, the perfect circuit, a man who never explained himself and somehow left a trail of legend that outlived him by more than a century. After his death, the Globe Museum in New York bought the Leatherman suit and dressed a man in it, sending him through the crowd yelling, "I am hungry, give me a child to eat."
Oh,
real story, which is just such a shame.
Yeah, because that's he never did anything like that.
Nothing like that at all. And in fact, the people who actually fed the real Leatherman were horrified when they heard about this story, and they actually put on protests, and they were heard loud enough.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah, that the display was actually shut down.
Good.
And unfortunately, though, the suit disappeared and is now lost to time. No one knows where it is. But today, the Leatherman's caves have plaques. Historians like Dan DeLuca have compiled his story in a book titled The Old Leatherman. There are documentaries, tours, even a Finnish folk band wrote an entire song about him. But the thing that keeps him alive today is the mystery. Why did he walk this circuit? Why Connecticut and New York? Who was he? And I honestly think that these are all questions that aren't going to get any answers. And I feel like we might have to walk this one off. Dad joke 1. And that's my and that's my story on the Leatherman.
I love this story. It's so interesting. I mean, part of me wants to say, here's a very deep spiritual man. He took this vow of silence. He just grunted and pointed at things, and he's on this walk, and it was inspiring to people. People fed him. People kind of took care of him.
Yeah.
It woke up something good in people.
I think that's a really interesting take and a really cool take. There are a couple theories that I can throw your way if you want to hear. They don't add up, but one theory was he participated in the Civil War and had some type of trauma afterwards, and his way of dealing with his trauma was to go ahead and perform this circuit. That's not true, because he started his circuit in 1857, which is a couple years before the Civil War even started.
Yeah.
So that's gone through my research. I saw that. I was like, well, that doesn't even add up or make any sense. So that's gone. I do think the newspaper article, even though it was proven that it's likely made up, I do think that's interesting. There is one additional story I'll share that I think is going to add some value. He did get arrested at one point and then brought him to an insane asylum. When they brought him to the asylum, they did like a checkup on him.
Sure.
And they basically said, no, you're all there. He's just has a lot of emotional trauma. They gave him money and let him go the next day. And I find that interesting, because if you relive that article that came out in the early 1880s, it basically said that he was a Frenchman who fell in love. The father of the person he fell in love with invited him into like the family company, which was a leather business. He ended up making a massive risk and ended up losing all the money. And then he couldn't marry the person he fell in love with.
Aww.
And he was banished from the family. In the wake of that emotional trauma, traveled to the United States. And this was his way of penance for the mistakes that he made. And although they say that it can't prove true, I think it's interesting. I feel like anyone who does this, there's some type of weight. There's some type of trauma or something going on. Maybe.
He's searching for something.
Yeah.
There's also somewhere on the spectrum and OCD disorder feel to this too, long before we could diagnose those things.
Yeah, I mean, we can't rule it out.
Well, if you're walking 10 miles a day, every day, and you have 60 pounds worth of leather on, anything you put in your backpack is going to be measured.
Mm-hmm.
And he had a prayer book that he carried with him. So that must have had real importance. It wasn't about his survival.
Yeah.
So it must have been incredibly important to him. So I'm thinking he's a deep spiritual man, right?
Could be. Definitely could be. A lot of people were spiritual back in this day, though. Right?
Yeah.
And religious. So
I think the fact that it was French is more significant.
Well, was he French and from France, or was he French-Canadian and, regionally
that's
born?
true too.
Yeah, that's an option as well too, that there's some theories around.
Yeah.
One thing I want to throw out, this isn't like a Sean theory, but maybe he just cracked the fucking code as a homeless guy. Like clearly there was like a homeless issue in the area, right? They had those vagrant laws that came out that pretty much criminalized being homeless and not having a fixed home. Maybe he just cracked the fucking code and said, I can continue living this life and living this way if I do this circuit. Because he pretty much did get an exemption. He became exempt from this. Being homeless is doable if you're not in the same spot consistently and you're just moving. People are more open-minded to helping someone out. Like you're just a visitor inside the town for that one day a month.
Yeah.
It's a lot easier to be like, oh, I'm going to feed this guy. Or if a town has multiple different people, you don't go to the same person every single month for your food. It becomes a lot more sustainable in a way.
That's interesting because, if you're just moving through, are you really a homeless vagrant?
Yeah.
If you're not sleeping the night there?
Or are you just a traveler?
Yeah, I might be homeless, I might be vagrant, but I'm not staying. I'm moving on to the next town, and everybody knows that, so I'm not getting arrested.
Yeah, I'm not putting a huge weight on the town, right?
I'm not a nuisance.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So I think that's kind of an interesting take too, that maybe he just cracked the fucking code.
Absolutely fascinating story. I wish we could find the bones, get some DNA, get, maybe a name,
Where's
family
the prayer
of
book?
origins.
That's a good question. Yeah, I'm not sure.
It'd be interesting to see if there's any kind of like writing in it or...
Well, that's the story of the Leatherman.
Yeah.
I hope you two enjoyed it. And gang, we hope you enjoyed it as well. And if you did, I'll go ahead and I'll make sure I post some images. There are images of the caves he slept in that are sprinkled throughout Connecticut and eastern New York. There are several photos of the Leatherman himself. I'll be sure to post that stuff on Instagram, Facebook, and Reddit. And with that, we'll take it as a reminder that we are building some communities out there. So if you want to interact with Kathy, Chris, or myself, or other listeners who are enjoying this podcast, just like you, be sure to check out that that Reddit, Instagram, and Facebook page. And we look forward to seeing you there. And remember, we are on the lookout for your weird New England stories. Do you have anything haunted? Aliens? Do you walk around town for 365 miles in a complete leather suit, hopefully not made of other skin? If so, go ahead and send us an email at thegang@weirderafterdark.com. We want to hear your stories.
We don't want to hear from that guy.
Yeah. Please don't wear other people's skins.
Yeah, don't do that. Don't do that. If you are liking this shit, if you are absolutely loving this shit, the best thing that you can do for us is go ahead and leave a 5-star review right wherever you are listening to this podcast, whether that's Apple or Spotify. Hit that 5 stars and drop a comment. It would mean the world to us. And don't forget, it always gets a little weirder after dark.
Bye.
Thank you, guys.